Greetings, I'm John Carl. Welcome to another installment of the Retirement Spectrum, where we get to chat with and interview some of the thought leaders and elite practitioners in our wonderful retirement industry that make the retirement industry so successful and help Americans retire with dignity. Today, I'm elated to have not just one of the great thought leaders and practitioners in the business, but a friend of mine, Randy Carver, CEO, founder, managing partner of Carver Financial, Raymond James. Randy, welcome to the Spectrum.
Thanks, John. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I mean, this is just good fun to get to have you, on a podcast here, Randy. I mean, you're legend. I mean, it's fantastic. So before we get into all the wonderful things that you do in the industry, which you do as the Chairman's Counsel, I think you're the head of the Chairman's Counsel at Raymond James. Is that accurate?
I don't know if there's a head, but at the top of it for about 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, I love your practice. It's just really great fun to get to interview on this stuff. And I got so many things I want to get across to our audience on what you've done with Carver Financial over the years, and most recently with the hiring of Dan McGinnis. But we usually start our spectrum with a get to know, and everybody wants to get to know Randy Carver. So this is the opportunity. So where did you grow up? What did you do along the way? I knew you're a pilot at one point. You know, there was a few things that went on in the airplane at one point in time. But how did you get to be Randy Carver? Carver Financial, literally one of the, if not the single largest practitioners in our industry, certainly at Raymond James.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting story because I never really intended to get into the industry. But I was born in New York, grew up in Baltimore, and moved to Toronto when I was 11. And 6 months later, I was diagnosed. I thought it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and metastasized everywhere. So I missed 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, half of 9th grade. But one thing I started doing is reading the Wall Street Journal, just kind of keep my mind off chemo and radiation and all the other stuff. So I got interested in investing, but never thought of it as a career, quite frankly. I actually started a bunch of companies, but by the time I was 17, I had a contracting company, 12 guys working for me. And I applied to college, decided to go to Oberlin, and had a bunch of jobs kind of help pay for that. But what I started to do, as I say it now, it sounds kind of crazy, but I would guarantee my professors 10 or 12% and use their money for margin on commodities trading, specifically silver. So I was trading silver for these guys. And one day someone said, you should teach a class in how to trade. So Edward Jones had opened an office in town. I approached the guy, said, hey, will you be a guest in my class? So I was teaching a college credit class in 1985. So I was, 20. So he came in and said, what are you gonna do when you graduate? Go back to Canada, I'm gonna paint houses, and I got this crazy idea to buy them, fix them, and sell them, because nobody was flipping houses in the 80s. He said, well, you ever thought about the industry? I said, not really. He says, well, you should give me a resume. And one of my jobs at the time, I was doing resumes for people. So I think I must have had one of the only computers on campus, so I could print out these things. He takes the resume. I go do 3 interviews. They come back and they say, nope. I called him. I said, now I'm really interested. What the heck? So long story short, his cousin was having a party in Morton, Illinois. So I rented a car. His cousin said the head of recruiting is going to be there. And if you come out, I'll get you in front of him. Give it a shot. So I rented a car. I drive out to Morton. I got there the night before, and the office is like drywall. There's no paint. And the receptionist is in tears. So it turns out she was responsible for getting this ready, this huge party. The mayor was coming. All the Jones people were coming. And so I said, look, and there was no box stores at the time. So they were like a hardware store. And I ended up painting the office. It took all night. I painted for like 12 hours to get the thing done. So next morning, the manager came in. He was really happy. He said, it's painted.
What do you think?
So the recruiter showed up and he went ballistic. I mean, he was really upset. Said, how can you circumvent our hiring system? Why would we hire? While he was screaming at the branch manager, I found Ted Jones and talked him into hiring me. So long story short, that's how I got hired.
Ted Jones of Edward Jones, of course, I guess. Yes.
So he basically made him hire me. Then,
only you, Randy. How to me does that story not surprise me? I mean, you are the epitome of self-made. And then from there on, I know I worked with you a little bit when you were at Ameriprise Financial, and you had
never Ameriprise. I was at Jones, and then really I saw a different vision for the industry, because at the time everything's based on sales, and I really wanted to create more of a service model. So whereas most offices you'd have 3 advisors sharing an assistant, I thought I'm gonna have 3 assistants so we provide that service. Jones wouldn't do it. I left them in '90, so it's my 3rd year in the business. Instead of my own shop, but I was with IM&R.
that IM&R,
which became Bill was Raymond James.
Yeah.
But that's where. So in '89, my 2nd year in the business, so when I had an unexpected landing and broke my neck. I couldn't speak for a year.
And you were flying the plane.
I was. Yeah, it was a small single engine that ate itself. And we went down, a piece of it at Pennsylvania and New York, but I think one piece at New Jersey. But yeah, we went down. I couldn't speak for a year. So I'd basically listen, write notes, and my assistant would talk for me. And we still had a great year. So,
well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you, again, service is the key to you, which is why you have a massive wealth management practice, but you also have, a retirement plan practice. So wealth to plans, I know you hired recently Dan McGinnis to the team, who's a, dedicated, really awesome plan advisor to your practice. He's a lucky guy to be running under the banner of Carver Financial with your relationships. Tell me how you approach really, I know you have 2 segments of your plan business. You deal with business owners from a wealth side. So, business owners, it's not just what they earn, it's what they keep, Randy. I know that's one of your lines I'm stealing from you, man. So how do you go in and deploy that? What are some of the things that you talk to business owners, many of which who are signing their own 5500s, many of which don't have an investment policy statement? They're business owners, they're running business. I know that's a niche for you, Randy.
Well, it is. Well, again, as far as a holistic planner, you're always looking at, risks that your clients are going to face. Obviously, we can't control the market. We control certain things. And as you said, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. So what we started to find is, business owners are really concerned about liability, which makes sense because they're big targets. And so our approach for most of them is try to understand the plan, understand what the issues may be. As you said, no policy statement, expensive investments, not doing plan reviews, and signing themselves. Whereas now, it's a 338 or some of the other plans, they can offload that risk. And in a lot of cases, now with the MEPs, they can reduce their cost and reduce the risk. That's just a win-win. So frankly, just bringing that idea to somebody is huge. In fact, yesterday, it's funny we say this, yesterday we're going to be picked up one of our biggest clients, I think he's going to be. And we went in talking about a bunch of things, but we talked about the potential risk. It's like, no one ever talked to me about that.
Right.
He's transferring his stuff. He may not move the plan, but just having that conversation. He moved $8 million yesterday. I just moved $30 million to us. It had nothing to do with performance or anything else. It's having that plan discussion. So plans, I think, understanding, potential risk and conveying that to business owners is huge. The other thing is, as you know, their most valuable commodity is time because they're running like crazy people. So if you can find a way to buy more time, why wouldn't you do that? And that's really the pitch. If I could reduce your liability, reduce your expense, and increase the time you can do other stuff, would you be interested in hearing about that? That's it.
I mean, it's a no-brainer, Randy. I mean, it's one of the many reasons why, I love you and love working with you, because you're always selling the solution. You're selling the need. And then look, I mean, to your point, you and I have talked about this. That plan is probably going to move to you at some point, but you were defining what was important to the business owner. And therefore, you're obviously one of the destination wealth management places in the country, but now you're approaching it from, the risk, the time, the risk, et cetera, to the business owner, whether you run the plan or not. I bet you eventually will, you and Dan, but what a great story here. How are you also dealing with this great resignation? Randy, you and I talked about like non-qualified deferred comp plans. What are you doing there? That's another risk for these business owners. They've got key employees. Maybe it's a family business. They're not giving them equity, blah, blah, blah. How are you skinning that cat with that? Are you addressing that?
We've talked about, we really haven't done that much of it, but circling back, because a lot of people listening, we were in the plan business years ago and moved away from it because as advisors, we want more time. We want to reduce risk, especially when the fiduciary stuff start to kick in. Like,
right.
Why would I play in the plan market, make 20, 25 basis points? I can deal with a retail investor, make 100.
Right.
It's less. But what we're finding is, again, just as clients may use the advisor, we use you guys. So with you guys, you can analyze the plan. You're the expert. So by subscribing and working with you, it's really made it very different. As far as accessing an expert. So I think there are people that may shy away from it. Think I don't have the knowledge. I don't want the liability. Frankly, you don't have to be, an expert in it. You can delegate that to, RLC or build in-house. In our case, Dan spends a good part of his time on that. He also works with retail clients. And so it's one of those things I think people may be afraid of, and they don't need to be. It's a lot of resources. The other thing is, it took a lot of our time to stand up the plans and then do all the meetings. And what we're finding is now, again, a lot of that can be outsourced. The plan providers do 95% of the work. We're basically introducing a relationship, and then we're talking to the owners. We don't outsource the meetings. And of course, the benefit of that is you pick up, as you say, the great resignation. You're picking up those people retiring. You're picking up the retail clients. And that's been huge from some of these places.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, Randy. I always find you're always kind of ahead of the curve. If you look at what's going on in our industry, locked in huge, locked in retirement, big plan business just got bought by Creative Planning, which is a wealth shop, right? Pension Mark just got bought by World Insurance, which is, obviously, wealth insurance, et cetera. You've got your own materially large plan business. And I know we've been talking about the business owners, but you also run large plans, but you're also incorporating that plan to wealth solution. And obviously in most of these cases, you are running the wealth client base. What are your minimums at Carver Financial? How do you go about, obviously you run most of the executives' money, but where do you, you've got a pretty robust team. Where do you come in at minimums and the rollover thing, which is a big deal right now?
It is, and it's a good question because I had that conversation with a lot of offices. So our business was built, I hate to say it in a negative way, almost on volume. We had a lot of blue collar kind of C-suite people was how I built the business. We now have roughly 3,000 relationships and about 2.6 billion in assets, of which the plan money is relatively small. I don't know the exact number, but it's probably less than 10%.
Small but strategic, I would say. It's small but strategic, right?
Because now I've never seen a time where it's become as important. Again, I can think of 2 or 3 cases this year that either with an existing client bringing that idea, hey, you're signing the 5,500, that's crazy. Let's move the plan. And frankly, we come in and say, look, we'll help you do this. You don't have to do it with us. We just want to protect you. If you want us to help, we will. But if not, that's fine. Either way, you're helping the relationship because it's consultative. And again, most people aren't talking about it. So our stated minimum is really $500,000.
Right.
The average account we're opening now, or the mean It's about that $1.5 million that we're seeing. In terms of assets, in the last 12 months, X market growth, we probably brought in $250 to $300 million from that retail. And we didn't buy any practices. It's funny, that's the other trend. There's offices buy practices. I think, A, that's a lot of risk compliance-wise, because you don't know what you're getting. B, in my mind, why would we buy something? We're going to get it for free. It's all going to come to us anyway. So I'm not worried about, buying a competitor, because arrogantly, I don't think we have any competitors. So having a minimum, I think, is helpful, though, because, hey, if you let someone in under the minimum, whatever it is, you're doing them a favor, they're grateful. If you don't want to take somebody, it could be a way to, basically not take them, but not insult them either. Just not a good fit for whatever reason. We do waive the minimum for kids and relatives. So it's as much of a, thing. The problem is there's only so many hours in a day. My guys, they run hard. It's really interesting because I know there's the debate of balance of life and this and that, the next thing, and that's all fine. But I think a lot of the reason we've grown as much as we have, just because we're open when other people aren't, showing up 90%. So, because people say, well, how are you growing that fast? Well, we work 6 days a week for one thing.
You and I chat on Saturdays, that's for sure. It's one of the best days to do it too, I find.
Yeah, so, it's a lot of work. But, the other thing is, if you think about being an advisor today, broadly, there has never been a better opportunity in this industry. The fact is, since 2008 till today, if you look at licensed financial advisors, you're down by about 25%. So you have about 70% of the advisors today that you did 10, 12 years ago. And if you look at some of the firms, they say the number's even less. The guys just keeping the license. They're not really doing anything.
Right.
At the same time, you have trillions of dollars of wealth transferring from Xers to millennials, so forth. And those people want advice. I think this idea that everybody wants robo, et cetera, people don't want to pay for transactions, but they will pay for advice. And so I think it's a tremendous opportunity. There are more CFPs over the age of 55 than under 30. That's frightening when you think about it.
Yeah, it really is.
Not about the great resignation or retirement. Look at our industry. Guys are leaving. So to me, it's just a recipe for success right now.
Yeah, I mean, and you talk about that thing. It's the interesting part of one of the fascinating parts about your practice, and one of the things that we sync up on is, we're seeing a lot of younger people in some of these more entrepreneurial firms, and we're even seeing some of the older, slower firms, paying their folks more interestingly, less cash, more equity comp, RSUs, RSAs, PSUs, PSAs. And of course, again, we analyze that stuff, as do you, but we're proud to be able to support you in that endeavor, because that's that advice aspect, right, Randy? I mean, it's getting more complex, and compensation is your number one asset. And if you, again, individuals getting this stuff, they need somewhere to go to get advice, right?
Right. And it's one of those things. Anything you can provide holistically, it's going to differentiate you from like Don Conley calls it the sea of sameness. Someone looking from outside in, why am I different than the 50 other guys in my little town?
Yeah, super cool. Well, my last question for you, Randy, now that COVID's kind of like theoretically on the back end, are you gonna do one of the client events, the legendary client events that I've been to in the past? And can I please be invited to the next one that you're having, Randy?
We are. It's funny. I do client trips every year. I did a client trip in January. So this is 3 months ago to Mexico. I had 70 clients go. So people are traveling. We did do we call it the resource breakfast. We tell them all the stuff we have. And we did that in January, and attendance was down. People were still, I think, a little bit edgy. On March 16th, we did an estate planning asset protection event, and we sold out with 400 people and had a big waiting list. So I think people are ready. Yeah, you're talking about Carver Palooza. So absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
Go to YouTube, look up Carver Palooza, you can check it out.
It's awesome. Well, I mean, it's fun to go to those, Randy, because they're fun, but it's amazing to see your clients there and how much they love Carver Financial. I mean, that's what I took away from it, is these people know you and your team. They're engaged. They're getting advice. They're engaged in their financial well-being. Retirement being a big part of it, because that's, at the end of the day, isn't that what we're all about here? Trying to get them to retire with dignity, fund their kids' education, whatever their key focuses are. But you're the epitome of that.
But I thank you. You know, and I think there's something people are talking about now called immaterial wealth. You know, people have a lot of money, well, whether they're 50 or 60 or whatever. They're looking for experiences. And they're not trying to buy more stuff. You know, how many cars and boats and planes do you really need? You know, they're looking for experiences with your kids, with each other. As I said, we've done the trips 25 years. You know, a lot of the stuff we do for clients is aspirational. I'll tell you a quick funny story. We did a trip to Cuba 4 years ago. It was a great trip, so Cuba was still open. We came back, and about 2 months I get an invitation to the Carver Travel Group dinner. Like, what is the Carver Travel Group dinner? Because I didn't. And it turned out that the clients that went formed their own little group called the Carver Travel Group. And every 2 months they get together for dinner on their own. I mean, you can't buy that type of advocacy if you wanted to. And so again, I think, you know, providing holistic stuff, that the retirement plans are generally the biggest asset, if not the second biggest. Business owner may have his business, then the retirement stuff. You know, if you're not at least talking about that, someone else is. And I think, you know, again, the important point is you don't have to be an expert. You know, that's what you have you guys for. They can hire you to be their expert and then still be the face with the client. And so I think people have a tendency to shy away from it. A, because of concerns about being a fiduciary, and B, again, just not having the knowledge or the time. And by delegating that, you know, for us, it's something we're moving more into, and clearly it's working. Because these business owners that, A, nobody's talking about this, and B, they're concerned about it. So it's really a perfect thing.
Well, Randy, I can't thank you enough for being on the spectrum today. You're a prince in our industry. Thanks for giving me some time to interview you on the retirement spectrum. And I hope to have you back soon to get some further updates as we matriculate through. There's some regs coming out of Washington. I know you were incorporating that. Elated that you got Dan on your team. You got a heck of a team. Thank you so much, Randy, for being on the spectrum today.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Everybody, you've been listening to Randy Carver, founder, CEO, managing partner of Carver Financial from the great Raymond James organization. Tune in next week for another installment of the Retirement Spectrum, where we get to interview the thought leaders and the key practitioners in our overall financial services and retirement industry, like Randy Carver here today. Randy, thanks for being on today.
Thanks for having me, John.